Hey Marvel Maniacs, welcome to another exciting episode of Guardians of the MCU. This is episode number 172. We're recording this on August 3rd, 2021. Just a reminder, Guardians of the MCU is part of the Ram Cheddar Network. Please check us out at randomchattercom for information on all of our shows, membership through Patreon, access to the Escape Whore? Wow. Escape Hatch Discord channel. Wow. And I'm not even going to bother editing that. I that's fine. And show merchandise from TeePublic. I'm Tim because I'm the only one who could screw it up that bad. Joining me tonight, John and Sheba. Hi guys, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Well, how are both of you?
I'm gonna go jump in an escape hatch.
See, I thought you were gonna say escape horde, so I was like, all right, cool. And then I'm like, oh, nope, it's not. Nope, it was not. All right, it's cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Folks, we do have a couple of special announcements here. We have had two guests on our shows lately. The first one, Sarah Irwin, she's going to be on episode 173 coming out later this week. And the second, we had Brianna Darnell return, or formerly Brianna Lamb. She has returned. That's going to be episode 175, and that's going to be releasing next week. The show with Sarah Irwin, 173, has already been up on Patreon for our premium and bonus members. And the episode with Brianna will be going up on Patreon shortly also. So they will be getting early previews of those shows before they go public. Do catch them. They are both fantastic. For those who don't know, Sarah Irwin she is a stunt woman who was the performer for Sophia DiMartino playing Sylvie on Loki. And Brianna is the stand-in who supported Sophia DiMartino on Loki. So as we mentioned last night with Brianna, we have 2/3 of Sylvie, and Sophia, if you're listening, come on, you know how to get a hold of us. We'd love to have you on the show.
We're looking for the trifecta, and you know what? We're going to manifest it by putting it out into the universe.
Exactly. We're putting it out there. Hey, maybe there's somebody that knows her and says, hey, there's this really awesome podcast called Guardians of the MCU. Mm-hmm. They want to talk to you. They've spoken to the other variants of Sylvie but they need the OG.
Yep.
So that's how we got to go with this.
I feel like she'd say yes, and then Marvel will turn around and say no.
Yeah, that would probably be what would happen.
Thus is our luck.
Yeah. Hey, it wouldn't be the first time.
I will cut us a break.
It wouldn't be the first time. But, the thing is, once we get Kevin on the show, once schedules finally line up and Kevin comes on the show, boom, the doors are blown wide open.
Exactly. And we're wonderful. We would never spoil anything, Kevin, if that's what you're worried about. We would never spoil anything.
Exactly. All right. We do have a pretty decent slate of news tonight. And John's going to be running this. So with that, folks, on to our news.
So I'm assuming you guys are ready for another MCU show.
No.
On Disney Plus.
Yeah.
No, so for live action, we've got to wait until November 24th. And that's when we will be getting Hawkeye.
Yep.
Did either of you see some of the screen caps or catch the article in Entertainment Weekly?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff. Some good little interviews in there. It was cool.
Yeah.
What are, based on what was said and kind of the aspects of it, make you most excited for this?
I'm really excited to see more of Florence Pugh. I'm not gonna lie, I was a big fan of her in Black Widow, and I want to see more of her. I want to see more of her little like comments, like this would be a good way to die. I'd like to see those moments, Um, but I am also excited, obviously, for Jeremy Renner and Haley Steinfeld because I do appreciate. I think I've seen a lot of Haley Steinfeld movies. I think I'd like to say I've seen all of them. So I'm a big fan. So definitely looking forward to seeing more of her and what she's going to bring to the MCU.
Yeah, same here. All the above. I definitely want to see a continuation of, Florence Pugh's story arc in this, and I want to see that whole passing of the torch with Jeremy Renner and Haley Steinfeld. So,
I want more Haley Steinfeld. I want to see again the passing of the torch, them setting up young Avengers or whatever it's going to be. I hope it's not a lot of Florence Pugh. I mean, I hope she's a minor piece of that story. But fair. Again, I didn't like, and mostly because I really didn't like her closing arc in Black Widow. So I'm like, no, I don't really care about seeing more of you.
Yeah, and it's understandable. I mean, unfortunately, the reality is that that's a pretty big setup. Mm-hmm. And I think that if she shows up for half an episode, we're all going to say, wow, that was really lame. So there's going to be something there. And I think that it's probably pretty likely that she's going to start in as kind of the primary antagonist. And I'm hoping that she'll then end up like kind of flipping, and step away from the dark side. But
that would actually make me more pissed off if she was like, "Oh, I was good because Nat asked me to be good, and then she died, so I went on to become an assassin, and I took a hit job to kill her best friend. But now I'm going to be good again." There is no more redemption arc. She is a villain. Let her be a villain with the Dark Avengers, and I'm good. I don't want any more redemption. She failed.
That's fair. Totally fair.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm just wondering. I'm hoping that they'll kind of give maybe a background as to how she ended up with Valentina, like what happened between the end of the movie and the time we see her at the grave. Like what went down there that made it so much worse that she had to completely go against what Nat would have wanted for her.
See, to me, that's not so intriguing. I think that, while she definitely has a sense of morality, I don't know that Nat necessarily, completely pulled her over to the side of being a hero. She was really just kind of,
that's fair.
When we look at the story of Black Widow, that movie was really kind of, it was a revenge movie. Mm-hmm. That's fundamentally what it was. So it was solely driven by her self-interest, which is fine. I'm not saying that like she was selfish in it or anything. That just happened to be the story that was told. So I think for us to expect that she was going to come out of it as a hero is maybe a bit much. Mm-hmm. So with that, I think it's pretty easy to see how Valentina, with her ways, the ways that she is, I think it was pretty reasonable for her to be able to kind of tug her over to a certain side. And of course, Valentina, she presents us these things, especially when we look at her interactions with U.S. Agent. Mm-hmm. She's convincing him that he's doing the right thing.
Right.
That he's on the right side of things. So she's not even like representing, quote unquote evil. She's basically looking at someone who's in a somewhat vulnerable, crappy situation.
Mm-hmm. And
who doesn't necessarily have any particular loyalties or affiliations, and she's taking advantage of it. So,
well, we will certainly see. But speaking of the MCU over on Disney Plus, we do get What If starting August 11th.
yeah.
Which is next week.
I'm even more excited about this now.
It really is next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep forgetting and I'm like, wait, that's next week.
Yeah. So the executive producer, Brad Winderbaum, confirmed that it is an anthology series. It is, in fact, part of the MCU, with it being intentionally released following Loki, which makes absolute sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Given, I think, and we even had that conversation before the final episode of Loki of, was this continuity? Was this part of the MCU? Was it not?
Yeah.
I do love his quote with this, saying that each episode is essentially a separate universe. So you could see the moment when, to use Loki's terminology, when the universe branches. And each episode kind of explores a story in one of those branches sometime after that point where it diverges away from the sacred timeline. I do have objective to him using sacred timeline because that no longer exists. Thank you, Sylvie. Sylvie, you made my life so much easier by doing that. No, and I think I'm well on record of saying I always loved these comics. I love how they're going to branch off and explore zombies, explore really kind of interesting twists and arcs. And I mean, I think the one most people are excited about is going to be the first episode in the Sharon Carter episode.
Totally.
Yep. Yeah, because they released the first three, like who was going to be the main characters in the first three episodes. So, the first one they were saying was the Captain Carter episode. The second one is going to be T'Challa's Star-Lord, sorry. And the third one, I can't remember what the third one was.
Whoa. Hold on a second. Sheba, with the branching in the multiverse, we're going to start to see Star Wars and Marvel crossovers. Is that what you just said?
No, I corrected myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I said Star-Lord.
I thought we had breaking news.
I think Tim's little snafu at the beginning has now transferred over to me. So now it's your turn, John.
It almost sounded like horror, but yeah.
I was like,
Sheba, you're going to see me dance around one of these bullet points when it comes to saying names. I'm just going to skip it because I ain't going to play that way.
It's one of those days.
Yeah, no.
But I can't remember what the third episode is. They released it and they showed the pictures, and I can't remember the third episode, but the first two at least I know for sure are Sharon Carter and T'Challa's Star-Lord.
And I think this is one, I don't think we've seen any positive release, but this is easily one where they can do multiple seasons and never have a shortage of story arcs to play with.
Also, I do remember the third one. It was Loki on Earth.
No.
Okay. All right.
It's interesting that they're doing a Loki.
Yeah.
Yep. After doing a whole season of Loki. I'm not complaining, though.
No.
The
question is which variant?
Yeah, and I wonder if it's a variant that we've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could finally get more President Loki.
I would like cool. more. It would be nice if we could get also more boastful Loki. I'm going to continue on from what we had talked about with Brianna yesterday. More boastful Loki.
Yeah. So jumping over to the movie side of things, we have Shang-Chi, and I'm going to say tentatively scheduled still for September 3rd. And the new featurette that came out, here's where I'm going to punt. I'm not even going to say the names that the featurette includes.
Simu Liu.
Simu Liu.
Kevin Feige, I can get that one.
And Aquafina.
And Aquafina. Oh my God, I can't speak now either. Aquafina. There you go.
See, folks, these are names. You know I was going to get them wrong. And it starts to tell the connections to Iron Man via the 10 rings and really kind of making that connection point back to the first movie. To me, this is part retconning. To me, this is part genius at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the connection was obvious. I mean, we knew that we had some faction of the 10 rings that had appeared in the first Iron Man movie. And yeah, I mean, be it whether you want to call it retconning or just simply kind of filling in some of the gaps of the story that we didn't know.
True.
They're basically just saying like, hey, so here's some more details on that connection, which I think is totally fair. It's good. I like it. I'm down with it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I'm really excited about this movie in general.
Yeah.
And I really can't wait. I'm really hoping that things are still safe, that we can still go to the movies so that I can actually watch this one in theaters, because I really, really want to.
Yeah, and that's why I said the tentative. And I don't know how it is in either one of your locations, but we're back to mandatory masks inside, regardless of your vaccine status.
Canada never, like, we are getting our vaccines, but we were always, it was still, masks on indoors regardless. So we weren't like, hey, vaccinated and you're done and over with. We still had vaccines here in Canada. So, I mean, masks on in Canada. So, and
when we get further down in the news, we'll kind of touch a little bit on this with Disney's approach and to see whether or not, I mean, we're a month out, whether or not they look to shift the timeline on this.
Yeah.
So James Gunn, you guys heard of him? I think he has a movie that just came out this week, or it's coming out,
which is doing really well. So yay, James Gunn.
Yeah, some really, really incredible reviews for the Suicide Squad.
Yeah. Going to see it Thursday.
I'm going to go see it when I plop down on my couch.
I'm venturing out to the theaters for the first time in almost 2 years, so it should be fine. Yeah. It should be fine. Yeah. I kept telling my sister, and I'm like, I'm a little nervous, but she's like, it should be fine. Everybody's, they're keeping everyone safe. So obviously I'm still going to be wearing a mask inside, but I wasn't planning on not wearing a mask. So I should be all right, but
Yeah, good.
Well, at least over on the Marvel side of things, and we know he's got some follow-on work on the DC side, he says that Marvel hasn't asked him to set up anything beyond Guardians Volume 3.
I see, anytime somebody says something, I just don't believe them anymore.
Okay.
Because, I mean, even if they had asked him to set something up, would he tell anybody?
Well, I don't know that he would necessarily disclose what it was. I mean, he did say, hey, look, or they apparently told him, like, obviously, I think things that he knew, like, hey, there needs to be some continuity with the whole Gamora storyline and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And while, in earlier films, he said, yeah, they would have like a couple of things that they did want me to set up, like, hey, we want an Infinity Stone. We want this kind of thing. But beyond that, the writers and directors pretty much got to do whatever they wanted to. And it seems in this, they've given him, free reign fully to do whatever he wants. So,
and like, I feel like, I mean, even though he did tell us those things, we didn't really know during the filming about the setups until after the movies were released, after kind of Endgame kind of thing. Then we would hear about all that stuff. So that's why, even if they did tell him something, and especially if it was something big, I don't think he would say anything, and we wouldn't know about it until much later anyways. So that's why I'm like, he could be telling the truth. He could also just be like, no, I don't know. And that's happened quite a bit. Like, we're not getting a season 2 of Loki, and then boom, season 2 of Loki.
True.
At this point, I'm like, I don't trust you.
Well, and we'll touch on him in just a minute. But Dave Bautista brought up the fact that movies tend to still a lot of times cycle in trilogies. And with this being the third one, he didn't seem surprised that Gunn was done with at least Guardians.
Right.
Now, will they potentially bring him back in to do something else? I mean, Gunn seems confident that Marvel's going to make an X-rated.
Whoa! Wow!
That was your one. That was your one.
Wow!
Gunn's confident that Marvel will make an R-rated MCU film. Maybe they will bring him back for that. I mean, if they make, do they even make X-rated movies anymore? I don't know.
I don't know, but
yeah.
I have now just titled this episode an adult episode.
or a comedy of errors.
Yeah.
That's one for each of us.
Well, all right. All right. So speaking of Dave Bautista, we're just going to
jump right into it
down the line. So it's no surprise, I think, to folks by this point that I grew up a WWF, now WWE fan. I still keep loose ties on what's going on in the industry. For example, it's very strange and very formulaic that John Cena just returned to the WWE after a multi-year hiatus, right as a movie of his was coming out.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, he's challenging for the championship belt. Anyway.
And either way, so he's still not a good actor.
Or a good wrestler, but that's besides the point.
I mean, I've enjoyed some of the movies that he's been in. He's been funny in some of them, or at least the one that I'm thinking of.
Occasionally, even a blind squirrel finds a nut.
No, that's fair. That is fair.
So he was interviewed recently, and he talks about where his life was when he got cast as Drax. And he hadn't worked in 3 years. He was out of money. His house was foreclosed. He borrowed money from friends for rent, for food. He'd sold pretty much everything he had from his wrestling career. And he had a very storied wrestling career. And he knew that he could go back, hat in hand, to the WWE and go back to that life. But he got cast as Drax. And since then, his career has really taken off.
Yep.
And in the tone from this interview, you really do get the connection and the love he has to and for James Gunn, because basically without that movie, without Gunn casting him, he doesn't have the career he wanted. He's chased this dream, and he got it largely because of Gunn and that movie. Yep. And I love the stories where you get a little bit of the human aspect of actors and actresses. And this one where you don't think of, I certainly don't think of someone who was very successful in one industry and now very successful in another one, basically being on the verge of homelessness. But you also do hear it all the time with athletes and others, when those things happen. So just another nice little piece on him.
And I just, I remember when even like going to watch Guardians of the Galaxy and somebody being like, yeah, Dave Bautista is in this. I'm like, the wrestler? And I'm like, he acts? Like he does acting work? And I had like zero, like other than just seeing him randomly doing some wrestling things here and there, I was like, oh, okay, is he going to be any good in acting? Like I had barely any what's it called? Expectations for his acting, and I was pleasantly surprised. And I've seen other things that he's been in since, and I enjoy his acting.
I've always kind of liked him and kind of followed him around because he's a DC native.
Fair.
Which is fun. And I like to think at one point in time he was a bouncer at one of the clubs I was at, and I actually got to see him, but I can't confirm that.
We can spread that. It's now a
spread
thing.
that rumor. It's now a thing. Well, might as well make it true.
Yeah, until Dave Bautista says no, it's a thing.
There you go. Did you guys see the trailer for Carnage?
Oh,
yes, I did.
All right. I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to go first because I've not been kind to this movie or Venom.
Fair.
I want to see the movie now.
Good.
That's good.
Did what a teaser and a trailer is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones kind of leading up to it, I was like, no, okay, whatever. The aspects and the new footage we saw in this one, I'd see it as just kind of a pseudo horror thriller without superhero tones to it.
Yeah.
It's getting me, well, it got me more interested in this version of Venom, this version of Carnage. And it seems like it's going to do it with a great combination. And I will say the first one had this too, of action and some drama and some humor. I mean, the scene in the church where Venom goes away and Eddie's like, you gotta come out now. And he's like, I'll let you eat everybody.
Yeah. That was great.
Yeah, that was my. I really enjoyed that. He's like, he's a red one.
I slapped my yeah. So it got me excited. What were your all's thoughts?
So I still have mixed feelings about it. Like I said, I enjoyed that. He's a red one. That made me laugh out loud. I'm still, because part of it, I want to see like the creepy, like the how he talks about he's a serial killer and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of like, I want to see that dark part of it, but I don't want to go in thinking, because before, for the first Venom movie, they were like, yeah, it's going to be really dark. It's going to be really like, rated R or whatever. And it's going to be really, really gruesome. And then it ended up just being kind of like a comedy. So I don't want to go into this one with that expectation because I don't want to be disappointed again. But I'm hoping that it'll be darker, because Carnage is just pure madness. So I want to see that, and I want to see him set up against Venom, because I always liked that in the cartoon. When I watched that originally in the 90s Spider-Man, I really enjoyed the back and forth between Venom and Carnage. So I want to see that, but I don't know what else to expect. So I'm intrigued is all I can say.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the first Venom movie. I really like what they did with it. His portrayal in the earlier Spider-Man films was fine, but there was kind of a certain essence of Venom that it was missing that was usually portrayed rather well in the comics that kind of really drew me to the character. And overall, I really enjoyed the first movie. There was kind of some stuff lacking in the story, but everything else, the action, the comedy, the premise, I thought all that was good. So Carnage, and we've talked about Carnage before. I've talked a lot about him. I really wish that they would have kind of set Carnage up to be a kind of like a Thanos type of big bad on the Sony side of things, that like there would have been this multi-film build up to get to him. But I mean, they're going for it early, which is fine. I mean, Carnage is a real heavy player. I'm hoping that they don't kill him off. They are seemingly giving him an interesting new origin story, which seems to be from the blood of
Yeah.
Of
Right.
Venom and Eddie. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And we also see a lot where Carnage has merged with the host. Whereas with Venom, they are still very much separate entities that work together. But like Carnage is like, which is also much more along the lines of the comics, where Carnage is the kind of biological physics of what Carnage can do is above and beyond what Venom has ever been able to do. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I thought it was a really funny trailer. I thought they set things up really well. I'm glad that it's, converted you, John, into being interested in it. And I hope it did the same for others. So I'm looking forward to it.
And this one is still slotted for a fall release as well. But the trailer doesn't have a date. It also doesn't have a rating yet. And I went and looked that up, and there's no confirmation on. The assumption is that it's going to be PG-13. But, always an offshoot. And that may be part of it, is they're still trying to, if it was given an R, what can they do to knock that down?
Yeah.
So our last little bit of news, and it ties back to, Shang-Chi and possibly Let There Be Carnage, with all the delays and movies coming out on multiple formats. And last week, Scarlett Johansson sued Disney over Black Widow and the Disney Plus release. For those that haven't followed the news and seen it, basically claims that the simultaneous release violated an agreement between Johansson and Disney, alleging that her salary for the film would be based in a large part off the film's box office results. That is not at all uncommon. And it kind of goes on further into the details within it. And we've seen in other studios where they've done some of the simultaneous release, they went back and adjusted actors' contracts. Disney did not do that.
They had to do it with Wonder Woman 84.
Yeah.
Because that was a big thing then. Yeah.
So this is significant. It's not something we talked at all about when we talked about the simultaneous release of things. And this is millions of dollars for Scarlett Johansson. And I think for some folks, it'd be, easy to dismiss it. She's gotten paid for other movies. How much more money does she need? I kind of take this as a contract's a contract. And my read of this is they violated their contract. And she's in the right. And I get why Disney chose to do this, and it made them a lot more money. But at the same time, they need to do right by their talent. And Kevin Feige is apparently pretty upset with this, and does not feel that Disney did enough to make it right with Scarlett Johansson, and is, quote, angry and embarrassed over this.
So there's a few things that I want to put out there on this, and actually without taking sides, because of course when it comes to things like this, there are valid remarks on both sides of this, and there are also some things that kind of have holes in them. And I had jury duty a couple weeks ago, and so I got like really well schooled in this, at least in terms of like looking at different aspects of some of these arguments. So of course, ScarJo's attorneys are saying that Disney violated the contract. Disney is saying no, they were fully in compliance with the contract. Her folks are saying that her contract says theatrical release. And they're kind of treating that like an exclusive. That there's nothing, apparently no one is saying that it had to only be a theatrical release, but the contract said that the movie would be a theatrical release. That said, I do firmly believe that the spirit and intent, obviously, of her compensation is associated with distribution. And I think particularly now with where we are with streaming, and streaming has been around for a while, but it has been less so about new content and more so about archival content. We have obviously through the last few years have seen more and more new stuff. And then over the last 18 months, it has become much more prevalent because it has really become the primary means of distributing new stuff. And I don't think that, while we're going to see some shifting in that model, I don't think that model is necessarily going to go away. And yeah, you know what? I don't blame Disney for saying, yeah, we're going to do a simultaneous release. Disney Plus, from the numbers that they released, they made $60 million in the opening weekend off of Disney Plus alone. If they did not do the Disney Plus release, there are a lot of people like me who still would not have seen the movie. Because I would not have gone to the theater. So and Disney would have made less money. And the argument that ScarJo's folks are making that, well, if basically they're moving all of that money, that 60 million into the box office pot and saying, well, we would have made that much more. Well, no, you wouldn't have.
No, especially
you wouldn't have.
That's exactly it. It's especially in other countries, like maybe some places in the US, things were opening up for theatrical releases. In Canada, nothing opened up. Yeah. We were still waiting. After the movie was released, that's when the movie theaters opened up here. So we wouldn't have been able to see it for at least a good while, at least a month or a few weeks or so. And I wouldn't have seen it. Nobody else I know in Canada would have seen it. So you're pretty much just saying that, hey, it should have been it almost feels like that they're trying to say that it should have been released in theaters and not taking into account how everyone was dealing with the pandemic. Because it was lives and people's lives at risk. And at the same time, I kind of feel bad that there are people out there that are struggling to, who have contracts with jobs who aren't getting paid as much at all because they're just struggling to, they're working for a company, they're working for a business, and they're not getting paid enough, or they were fired, or they were let go, and they're not getting paid anything because of the pandemic, and now we're struggling. So part of me, I understand that it's not her contract, but at the same time, I can't, at the same time, there are other things that I would want to advocate for first, because I'm I know friends who lost their jobs because they were like, hey, the company that I'm working with was like, hey, we're not doing this, bye. People that worked for movie theaters lost their jobs because they're like, hey, we don't need you right now, so bye. And I understand that her contract wasn't met, but she still did get paid. And on the other side of things, if we're talking about if this is going to continue and Disney's like, hey, we're going to do a simultaneous release while we do theatrical releases, what's going to happen? Because we're getting a lot of more representation coming out. What's going to happen to those people? Like Scarlett Johansson is a famous actress. She can actually go, hey, you know what? I'm not getting what I deserve. I need this. But there are newer actors and actresses, people of color who may not feel that they have that privilege to say, hey, you're not paying me enough, or you're not meeting my contract. Can you please give me more money, or can you please give me what I'm owed? They may not be able to do that. So what will happen to those people? They may not have that same privilege to go, hey, I'm gonna sue you because I'm not getting paid what I deserve.
Yeah,
and they might not even be getting that much.
Yeah, I think that the big thing here is that with this shift in the industry, with how things are distributed, there needs to be a recognition of that shift and of the staying power of that shift, and that the standard of contracts, particularly for, it's primarily the A-list folks who are paid, who are strongly paid in accordance with traditionally box office. Yeah. But now it needs to be opened up to all distribution in terms of how they're paid. And I think that contracts need to define that. And it's either going to be the industry that's going to change that. It may be pressure from like SAG or somebody else who's going to change it, or it may very well be the courts that are going to change it. Now, I don't think this is actually going to go to court. I think this is going to get settled out of court.
Definitely.
But, hopefully the production companies are going to recognize, and hopefully the talent will also be negotiating this in their contracts to say, hey, look, whatever you're committing to now, we know the world can change in a year when this thing is going to get released. We want assurances that we're still going to get paid.
Exactly.
So,
because I'm worrying about things like Shang-Chi and like people getting paid there and getting their worth there. So
sure.
And and you guys kind of hit the nail on the head. It's bringing things up to, I wouldn't even say a post-COVID world, because a lot of this was already being impacted before that.
Yeah, it was in the works already.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast earlier today where they said basically COVID jumped some things with technology, such as this, 5 years in a year. Yeah. And so, and the genie's out of the bottle. Studios have realized they can make money this way based on their subscriptions, based on, Disney Plus already had my monthly subscription. I dropped $30 on it. It turned out it was only Jake and I who watched Black Widow. So $15 a ticket, a little bit more expensive than going to see a movie, but all that money goes straight to Disney, as opposed to, as both of you have mentioned, yes, it's a revenue split, but that just creates more jobs in communities as well. So there is, there's both for it, but I think, Tim, I agree with you. I think there's going to be a settlement, but I also think if Disney doesn't adjust, they're a big dog, but there could be, actors, actresses, and others who don't want to work with them if that's how they're going to. And we heard this early on with how they structured some of their contracts with folks. I think Samuel L. Jackson was outspoken about it, and they changed a lot of that. So they do a great job of attracting and getting top tier talent, but they also need to take care of their talent at the same time.
True.
Yeah.
So, folks, I think that does it for this week. As Tim mentioned, please do check out episode 173 for our special interview with Sarah Irwin. I knew not a lot about stunt performers before this, and she does a great job of giving us a behind-the-scenes look and really getting you to even more so appreciate all of the work that goes into that. Sheba, Tim, anything else from you?
No, I'm good.
Nope. I'm good too.
All right. Thanks, everyone, and take care.